Again, the question is if you do not think that you do not use AI in your daily life. Again, the question is if you do not think that you do not use AI in your daily life. I just a second. All right, looks like we do not have any answers. I'll move on. So I assume most of you are familiar with AI systems, and I assume that when I say AI, what comes to your mind instantly is probably ChatGPT or DeepSeek. And in case you're one of those people who do not use ChatGPT or any of these AI systems, I think what you might be picturing will be driverless car or automated cleaning robot or even just a robot. So maybe it's easy to think that I do not use AI because I do not use the popularly known technologies, AI technologies in today's world. But however, that's not the truth. AI today is embedded in our everyday experiences. If you are using technology, then probably you are using some technology which uses artificial intelligence. So, in order to give you a few examples, social media platforms use AI to curate your feed and suggest content based on your interest. Search engines like Google use AI to deliver predictive text and tailored results. Streaming platforms like Netflix or YouTube also use AI to give you suggestions based on your previous viewing patterns. E-commerce sites, voice assistants, spam filters, navigation apps, all of this rely on AI driven systems to function smoothly. So if none of this is something that you use, then at least I'm assuming you will be consuming some sort of AI generated content, whether it's a Ghibli image or a deep fake. In short, AI shapes much of how we interact with technology today, often in ways we do not even notice. So, coming to the main question, what exactly is artificial intelligence? So, artificial intelligence is a field of computer science that allows machines to perform cognitive functions just like we have in our human brains. So, this includes learning, reasoning, problem solving, understanding a new language, or even recognizing patterns. AI systems use algorithms, large volumes of data, and high speed computing to learn from experiences and perform tasks that would otherwise require human intelligence. At sflc.in, we work at the intersection of law, technology, and human rights. As AI continues to evolve rapidly, we believe it's more important than ever to have informed, rights respective, and inclusive conversations around AI development and governance. Over the past year, we have deepened our work in the space through research, public engagement, and policy advocacy. So, recognizing the growing use of AI in politics, last year we launched the AI Elections DeepSeek Tracker, a tool to document and analyze how political parties in India are using AI technologies, especially during election campaigns. More recently, we also launched the AI Tracker, which keeps a close watch on all policies, regulations, and guidelines issued by various government bodies in India. This includes any advisory notes, sectorial standards, or upcoming legislations. The tracker serves as a central resource to monitor how AI governance. With this, I begin the AI in Converse this week. We primarily focus on five major. In the coming next 5 days, we have events set across each day. So, on day one, that is today, we'll be having a discussion on the topic building AI models, opportunities and challenges that are faced in the Indian context. Day two, which is May 27th, we'll be having a discussion on consent to control privacy in the privacy in the AI era. will be on free speech and AI in the age of global uncertainty and information warfare, where we'll be specifically discussing on how generative technologies from deepfakes to content moderation tools are influencing our expressions online. The second keynote will be on open source and AI, where we reflect on the importance of open source in AI and how it is challenging to build such technologies and why it should be built. On day 4, we have AI in changing landscape of journalism, especially with all the recent happenings that have happened in India. We examine how AI is being used in newsrooms, and finally, on 5th day, we have a quite rarely discussed topic, but an urgent issue, that is the human and environment cost of the AI race. So in this keynote, we'll be discussing how workers in building AI technologies. So with this, I begin today's section. Moving on. So for today, we have Mr. Chandrahas. Praveen Chandrahas currently serves as the Secretary of Swecha Technology, a non-profit organization dedicated to promoting the free software movement in the Telugu-speaking states of Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. In his role, he has been instrumental in localizing software tools and developing AI solutions through speech systems. Beyond his work in Switcha, Praveen is the director of DigiQuanta and holds a position as general secretary for the Forum of IT Professionals and as an executive committee member of the free software movement at Cisco Systems and ThoughtWorks. And he also holds an MTech in computer science from IIT Madras. He works at IIT Madras. His work in IIT Madras include um, in architecture for IMPS, which eventually became the basis for UPI systems in the country. Praveen is also a driving force behind large-scale AI training initiatives, notably collaborating with institutions like IIIT Hyderabad, where he has helped in the training of 1 lakh plus engineering students in preparing a AI future in India. So over to you, Praveen.
Thank you so much, Angela. And first of all, congratulations to SFLC on organizing this. And thank you for inviting me to be a part of this. The schedule looks great, a lot of interesting talks and something, especially on open source, AI, environmentalism, a lot of stuff. And we've had a long and fruitful association with SFLC over the years as well. That's it. Thank you. And is I'll take you through the journey of what we've been trying to do or what we're doing, and just share our experiences, what we've seen, or what we believe or some of the opportunities that are there. Again, the talk while we are talking about the opportunities and challenges. Angela, can you please let me know once you start seeing my screen?
Hi, Praveen. It's visible.
All right. Right. So I'll start with some challenges that are broadly for the global AI community itself, and not just specific to India, and then move on to some opportunities that we believe can be taken up in countries like India and what I call the global south. Right. So let me first touch upon the challenge that we are seeing currently. Right. All current AI technologies are geared for the global north, and it is a consequence of the way AI systems today are built. Right? AI systems today are all these large language models, as we call them: ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Llama. Any of these are essentially probability models where you predict what is the next word. These are all next token predictors, essentially trying to predict what might be the next word given the current set of words. A very simplistic understanding, right? That also means that these systems have been trained. These are statistical models. These are probabilistic models that have been trained on large data sets. And I'm sure we have all heard of these data sets and other things, right? Now, these data sets, where have they taken it from? These data sets have been taken off from the internet or any other digital content. Colonial languages, by the virtue of being colonial languages like English, Spanish, French, maybe Portuguese, are rich in these digital content. If you see the internet today, it is largely filled with content in the colonial languages, English, Spanish, Portuguese, French, perhaps, right? And while I'm not saying there is no content in Indian languages or the languages of the global South, but the orders of magnitude lesser than the content that is available in any of these languages. Now, it's not just a question of language, mind you, because if you look at a lot of countries in Africa or Latin America, for example, the language is the same. Language is either Spanish, Portuguese, or in some areas French. It is not just the language, but the cultures and the knowledge are also underrepresented on the internet. It does not matter if there is Spanish language content on the internet, but are we representing the culture of South America? Are we representing the cultures of a lot of sub-Saharan African countries? Not necessarily, right? So there are two aspects over here, right? Colonial languages and colonial cultures are overrepresented in these large language models or the current AI technologies because they are just widely available on the internet and a lot of digital content is available. Our cultures or our languages, when I say our, the global South cultures, or let's say Indian languages, Indian cultures, for example, are what are called resource poor languages. They're digital resource poor, they're just called resource poor languages. What do you mean resource poor? It's not like global South cultures have not existed beyond a few hundred years or anything, right? They've been existent for thousands of years. They're rich cultural heritage and history and traditions and everything. But the point is that these are not present in a digital format, and hence the global South cultures or languages are called digital resource poor languages or resource poor languages. Every Indian language, including Hindi, falls under the resource poor language category. When I say resource poor, it just means that we do not have enough content or enough data sets, digital content available in these languages. To set some context, ChatGPT's latest version has been trained on trillions of tokens. Tokens, for our understanding, let's equate them with words. Right? Well, they're not strictly equivalent to words. For our understanding, let's equate them to words. And ChatGPT has been, the latest versions have been trained on trillions of such words or tokens. Trillions, right? Now, if you look at all the corpus or the data sets available for any of these Indian languages, I'll be surprised if we hit a few billion, right? Even if you put together all the Indian languages and scrape all the content available on the internet, I'll be surprised if we hit a few billion, maybe a few billion, right? But compare it with the trillions that is available on the internet for other languages, like English, for example. It's just no comparison at all. Right? So that is a predicament. That is a huge challenge that is present if you want to start building AI for India. When you want to build AI for India, it is not necessary. It is not sufficient that you build an LLM or AI systems in English. Right, while our literacy rates might be, I'll give you the example of Telangana, where I am from. While the literacy rate is in the mid 70s, let's say 75% as an example, does not mean that 75% of the population speak in English. A literacy rate, a person is illiterate if they can speak, read, write, and sign in their own language, in their own mother tongue, not necessarily English, right? What might be the English literacy in a state like Telangana? 20% best case, and I'm sure it is similar across the country. In fact, perhaps lesser than that, given there are states which have a lower overall literacy rate, the English literacy rate might be even lower. So to build AI for India will mean that we need to create AI systems in Indian languages as well. And where do we get these tokens? Where do we get these data sets? That is a big challenge that we are currently facing. What does it also mean? It also tells us something about the opportunity. We cannot perhaps blindly replicate what the global north did, what the US, or not even Europe, let's just stick to US for now, right? We cannot blindly replicate what the US or the global north has been trying to do, or what they have done with the current AI systems. We cannot, just have a trillion tokens, immediately generated in Indian languages, right? It's not practical, let's say, right? We need to evolve our own set of approaches, frameworks, and practices. So this is the context in which I'm going to talk about some of the opportunities as well. And I would like to present the opportunity in two dimensions, right? Obviously, we need to create democratic AI. I don't think we need to discuss about the why of democratic AI, but let's break this down into two things, right? What does democratic AI even mean, right? Does it mean that everybody participates in building of it? Does it mean that everybody participates in the access of it? Does it mean everybody has a say on what AI will do? I'm removing the semantics of it and break this down into two parts for our discussion. Right? We are saying we need to find a way to democratize the building of AI, and then we need to democratize a way of accessing AI. Let me first touch upon the first bit. Right? What do I mean by democratizing building AI? Currently, you require these huge data sets, right? Then you require access to humongous GPUs. Today's H100 clusters, right? H100s, cost millions of rupees, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to purchase. No, forget the cost. With the trade tariffs and everything in effect, it has become almost impossible or very difficult, if not impossible, to for our country or any other country for that matter to import these GPUs. Right? And you will need tens of thousands of such GPUs to be able to train an LLM, train a large language model on these data sets, right? So you have the GPU problem and you have the data sets problem. So we will need to democratize both. If you are saying that the only way that I can build an AI is by having access to, 100,000 high-end GPUs, then that's not democratic. Nobody will have access to this, 100,000 GPUs except the uber rich of the world or the mega corporations of the world will have access to these, huge amount of GPUs. The other bit is the datasets. The datasets are just not there. Even if you're seeing today, I'm sure it's been all over the news for the last few days, and even before that, people have been building LLMs within India. But let me tell you that they're all building a lot of their datasets are what we call synthetic datasets. Synthetic dataset, and by synthetic dataset I mean the data itself has been generated by another LLM. Right? They will ask ChatGPT or one of these LLMs to create data in Telugu, Hindi, Tamil, Odia, Malayalam, whatever, and you take that data and then you train another large language model out of it. I don't need to tell you what this would do, right? It's just not the right way to do it. So we will need to find a way of building the datasets of the global south for the global south by the global south. And I'll distill what this means with a practical example of what we are doing at Swechha and a center of excellence on AI for the global south called Viswam.ai, Viswam.ai. Touch upon that in just a bit. The training, the GPU problem. If you want to train a large language model without 1 lakh GPUs, without 2 lakh GPUs, can you do it? We believe there is a way, and we'll talk about that. Ultimately, what we need to evolve is better algorithms for AI. The current, as I said, these are all stochastic models that just rely on probability distribution to find the next token or the next word. That is not how human beings work, right? I'm not just predicting the next word. You're not just predicting the next word that you're going to speak, right? There is a different way intelligence will. Sorry, uh, somehow got muted. We need to find a different way of ensuring that AI systems get better. We need to have better algorithms. Current algorithms are what in the computer science world we call a brute force approach. Right? If you want to crack a password, there are different approaches. The most obvious way is brute force. You type every single combination that's available, which is also why AI is insanely power hungry today because it just does a brute force approach. There are hundreds of millions of matrix multiplications that happen that require the last topic in this AI in conversation series, right? barrier is gone, technology comfort barrier is gone. You're removing the barriers to access. Then what we call the inferencing problem, right? So on the left side, you see there is a training problem, which is to build the model. Then every time, for example, when you ask a question to ChatGPT, an inference happens, the calculation of the answer that happens, right? We'll need to lower that as well. We'll talk about a way of doing it. These are novel ways that we are proposing that we do. How do we decentralize, distribute the inferencing as well? And ultimately building solutions for the commons around these things. What do we do with this AI? It's not just about writing emails. Can we now use this technology? Technology is unleashed on the society, right? There's no putting the genie back in the bottle. How do we ensure that this technology can be utilized to create solutions for the commons? Now, these are some of the things that we at Swecha and Wisdom.ai have been working on. Not just idle talk, but let's just start off with some proof of concepts of how we can actually democratize the building of these things. So when I said, we need to build data sets for by of the global south, these are two examples that I will just like to touch upon. We started off with the second one, what we call the AI, what we have called the AI Chandamama Kadalu. Some of you must have grown up on reading this children's magazine called the Chandamama. It was widely published in the country in various languages. It is growing up, and previous generations of mine as well growing up. These are moral stories that are published in Indian language with an Indian cultural context. It's not just Indian languages. The moral stories were deep rooted in the culture and the context of our history or our culture. Unlike, let's say, Aesop's fables. Right? I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it properly. I don't know if it's called Aesop's fables or Aesop's fable or whatever. It's also because the culture is far removed from our thing. You'll also see that some certain stories in Chandamama have been adapted from either the Aesop's fables or some other thing. Just like the Jataka tales have been adopted into multiple other tales that we see today. Right? So we thought, why don't we try and do this? Why don't we? This Chandamama was not available in a digital format. When I say digital format, there were scanned PDFs available, but that does not equate to a digital content. The scanned PDF is as good as an image. A system will not be able to read what is written over it, especially because it's in Indian language. So what we thought was, why don't we do a sort of a hackathon? A hackathon, we call it a datathon. We went and approached engineering colleges over here. If some of you are familiar with typing out or correcting the errors from OCR, optical character recognition, we were trying to correct out the corrections or errors that crop up when you use OCR technologies. We took inspiration from that. So we said, we will do OCR on Telugu. However, we'll get 60-65% accuracy. That's not sufficient to create a good quality data set. So what we did was we OCR'd all scanned all of these Chandamama stories. We did OCR on it, and we went to colleges and we said, all students and faculty, why don't we do this? Let's do a datathon. We'll give you a left side is the scanned image, which is the original. On the right hand side of your screen will be the text generated by OCR, which is 65%, 70% correct. Read it, correct it wherever there are errors. You just type in the actual text that you see on this thing. But 10,000 students and engineering students and faculty contributed to this. On one day, we were able to finish all stories. These are decades worth of stories on Chandamama, and then we were able to create a data set on it. Once you have the data set, it's a training problem, right? So we launched the story spinner model in Telugu. It's a very small short story generating. You give it a prompt, it generates a small story, a short story in about 4 to 5 lines. It's a small paragraph sort of a thing. But this was the first attempt to show that, this is what is generally called crowd-sourced. We would like to call it people-sourced way of building AI systems, building data sets. So we took this step a little further. We thought, why don't we create an automatic speech recognition system? So if I'm speaking in Telugu, in any dialect, any accent, I should be able to transcribe it into text. As you're aware, in India, every 30-40 kilometers, the dialect changes, the accent changes, the words will also change. I'm sure it is the same for every language in our country and not just Telugu. Right? So how do I capture all of these things? So we launched a project called Gontuka, Swecha Gontuka. Gontuka means voice. And we asked everybody in the state they'll give you just one sentence in Telugu. You just press record and read that sentence out. We took inspiration from Mozilla's, it was called the Common Voice project, Vox Populi Common Voice project, but we did it for Telugu. We said, wherever you find time, please do not do it in an isolated setting in your room where there's no voice. Do not check in a podcast room. Who participated in this thing. That gave us enormous data, but also really good, high quality data. What did it lead to? It led to a Telugu ASR system that is more than 95% accurate. Right? If I must speak, and that is far better than what OpenAI's Whisper and other systems today are. And I'm sure they spent millions of dollars in building those systems, where in the campaign and other things. Right? Can we start thinking of building an LLM in Telugu, which is what we're calling a culture LLM? Questions about Eisenhower or Roosevelt, but can I create an LLM which is rooted in our culture, which understands cultural context, especially for translations? Translations get lost because idioms, phrases cannot be true translated from one language to another language. Idioms are rooted in the culture of wherever you've grown up with the language, right? So we thought, why not the release to start thinking of this? How do I collect 1 billion tokens? So we thought, okay, we'll do this. We will engage 1 lakh engineering students. We'll do an AI internship, what we are calling the Seta Sahasra Yagam. Seta Sahasra is 100,000, 1 lakh. Yagam is a mission, right? So we thought we'll do this as a mission. We'll engage 1 lakh engineering students. We'll break this down. I need 1 billion tokens, okay, which means approximately I will need 100 million sentences to be captured, assuming that every sentence is made up of 10 words that we speak. So I need to capture 100 million sentences. How do I capture this? If I can get 1 lakh engineering students to sign up to do this internship and ask each of them to go and collect whatever it is, 100 million by 100K. I'm not doing the math right now. My math won't math, but you get the drift, right? You get the drift. If I can get this 100 engineering colleges, Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, I'm sure all of you 5 lakh engineering students, right? So can we now reach out to 1 lakh engineering students, train them on AI and datasets, and ask them to go meet people and collect sentences? On what? What is your cultural data? Your cultural data is your folk tales. All of us grow up listening to stories from our parents or grandparents or uncles and aunts, right? Which are deep rooted in whatever. These stories are adapted from some other thing, their own experiences, but rooted in the culture, right? Folk songs. People sing songs when they are harvesting in agriculture or some other work that they're doing. Traditional skills, local cultural history, or local history, or people who have fought for the freedom, food and agriculture, newspapers, any of these things older than 1980, because we don't want to run into copyright issues like OpenAI is running into. We don't want a Times or any of these people coming and claiming copyright issues over here. Before 1980, we are sure nobody is going to worry about the copyright for newspapers. The copyright for newspapers, you are all better than me in understanding that, right? I'm sure you will tell me more about the copyright issues. But we said, let's go and do this. Let's go start collecting the data. Right now, as we speak, there are 30,000 students who are taking part in this internship. We had 30,000 last year. We were not able to reach 1 lakh last year, but I'm sure we will reach this year. This year, the first cohort started on 25th, yesterday, Sunday. There are 30,000 students who are taking part in this cohort, and we already covered about 13 districts, and we have collected 150 million tokens. Right, 150 million tokens is what we had already collected. Our aim is to reach a billion tokens. By August, September, we will definitely cover this. This is all engineering students, who are part of this internship, who are doing this data collection activity and stuff. So we created a very simple mobile app. SETI at home. SETI stands for Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence at Home. Back in the day, this was in the infancy of internet spreading across the globe. There was this big at that point of time, there was this big search going on for extraterrestrial intelligence, right? Aliens, for simplicity's sake, right? There are these radio telescopes across the world, not just the optical telescopes, radio telescopes, which collect the radio waves coming into the Earth from different parts of the universe. The problem was, this was huge amounts of data. This was terabytes of data, right? And nobody was willing to put in that kind of compute power. And supercomputers were used for other purposes, defense, weather prediction, and other things. But people were still interested in this. People were still interested in finding out if we are alone in this universe or if we had some friends elsewhere in the universe. So what did people do? They came up with this hugely distributed computer. The computer was spread across the globe. This was late 90s, mind you. I mean, this is before the internet took off. This was late 90s. They said, and we were all, a lot of us were using this old Windows systems where if you do not move the mouse for about a minute, a screensaver comes up. Right? A screensaver is essentially trying to save your screen. But people said, okay, when your computer is not being used, instead of the screensaver, install this application called SETI at home. I will use that spare processing power, because you are anyway not using your computer, to download small bits of this data, of this radio data, process it locally, and then send it all across to a central server, which can then patch this all together again. We thought, okay, why don't we? And if you just so you know, the world's largest distributed computing cluster is a SETI at home project. Right? It was at one point it was the world's fastest supercomputing system as well, made up of volunteer computers. Volunteers across the globe were donating the spare time of their computers whenever they're not using the computer. Instead of the screensaver, I'll install this application. It will use my CPU power. So if there are 10,000 systems using this, then it's equivalent to, let's say, I don't know, 1 lakh systems equivalent to one supercomputer or something like that, right? So they were able to do this. In fact, the same concept was used during Corona, during the COVID pandemic as well, where there was a project called Folding at Home that is still the world's fastest supercomputer. They were trying to model the RNA of the virus. Right? Anyway, that aside, we thought, why don't we take inspiration from it and create a project called AI at Home? Going back to my first couple of slides, I said training and the GPU is a problem. Right? I cannot buy 10,000 GPUs, but I know that there are millions of computers, and everybody holds a mobile in their hands today, which is equally powerful, which is as powerful as the CPU that's sitting at your home or your laptops. Right? Now, can I harness the collective power of these CPUs and the collective power of these mobiles in building a distributed system? Every day night, we put this phone for charging and sleep. We're not using this. We're not using the processing power of this. Now, can I use that time, create a cluster of a million such phones or CPUs, and then use that power to train AI instead of trying to buy these millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of GPU equipment? Can we try and do that? So we did this experiment, and I'm happy to report that we are fairly successful. This is an experiment is still, and these are in the image you see that there are systems that are connected across engineering colleges in Telangana, right? Not in one geography. These are systems across the state, each located hundreds of kilometers apart. Right? That is something that we are going to validate during this internship as well. Where we are saying all these 1 lakh students, each of you use your own CPU, use your own phone to train that particular data that you have collected. We will all collate it together and create a big, large language model out of it. We are saying these are different ways of solving the problems, or these are opportunities, because this is the way. If India can lead the way on this, that is the way the global south can follow as well. So the opportunities and challenges that India is facing, while unique in a sense, is also the kind of challenge, is also the kind of opportunity that every other global south country will face or is already facing. And we now have an opportunity to showcase how these can be solved, or how these challenges can be overcome. Thank you, Angela, and thank you, SFLC. I don't know if Prashant's here, but thank you everyone for inviting me. And this is just wanted to share a few bits of work that we have been doing at Spectra and Wisdom.ai. Please do reach out to us if you would like to collaborate, participate, partner in any way. Thank you, Angela. I'm going to shut up right now.
Thanks a lot, Praveen. That's really amazing, the work that you're doing at Swesha. We're so glad that there are people like you who are doing this work. Opening the questions. So if there's anyone in the audience who wants to ask a question, you can post the question on the chat, or you can unmute and you can raise your hand and then unmute and ask us the question.
I see Suraj has asked a question. Okay, Angela, how long do I have?
You have enough time, 5 to 10 minutes for sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, all right. So let me take a stab at answering this. Suraj's asking, what are the challenges in building LLMs and small language models in Indic languages other than a lack of content? A few things. The technology also needs to evolve for Indian languages. When I say the technology needs to evolve, we are using, so the part of building a LLM or an SLM is also the first step, what we call, let's say, let us assume that data sets are clean and everything. So that's an assumption, because you're saying other than lack of content, let's assume the content is there, clean, you have gold standard data sets available. We'll need to build our own tokenizers. So when data is there, you need to break it down into tokens. The tokens that the tokenizers, which essentially does this process, what we are currently using are built for English and other languages. You're not really sure if that's the right way to go for Indian languages, especially the Dravidian language. You also hear that we have the Indo-Aryan languages and the Dravidian languages, right? We need to figure out if we need to build our own tokenizers based on the language structure, based on the grammatic structure of our languages. We might need to build our own tokenizers, and that's just one example of the technology that needs to evolve. Then there might be differences in the way we train these things. The other aspect is that is a lack of resources, as I just spoke about, right? You need access to ginormous amounts of GPU power and other things. It's both. First is the availability of the GPUs, then the cost associated with even hiring a GPU and running this, then the energy cost that is associated with, first of all, building these things. And then the second question is, if you want to serve these LLMs, you'll again require access to GPUs, which is again another constraint, right? So two levels. One is creating our own tools to create the tokenizers, tools to train these things and other stuff. Then this thing, right? Then the training of GPUs, and then serving the LLMs using a GPU. That, I believe, are some of the fundamental challenges that we are facing. Some of these are now being solved. Sarvam has just released an open source LLM, but they fine-tuned it on another open source LLM called Mistral. We'll need to build our own foundational models. Then I think that is when we will realize what kind of problems are there. Right, so that is the first thing. How can Rinish is asking, how can anyone participate in the AI at Home project? Is it open for contributions? Absolutely. Swechha and the Free Software Movement of India are free and open source software organizations. We We are more than happy for people to contribute. Everything is available on code.swechara.org, code.swecha.org, code.swechara.org. If you search for AI at Home Swecha, you'll find all the links. You can contribute to the project in any way you can, from coding to just contributing by donating your CPUs or GPU power as well. Right? Yes, anybody can participate. In fact, we would like this to be a larger national level project where we showcase that this can be done. We are still in the slightly experimental stage. In about a month or two, we would want to do much more campaigns on these things and get a lot more people participating. If you can contribute at the technology level, Renish, more than happy. Please do reach out to me and we can take this up. Gangesh is asking, what in your opinion is lacking in the enabling environment to leverage the investments made in developing AI models in India? Additionally, what might incentivize better utilization of models developed to better suit global South requirements? Let me see if I understood the question properly, Ganesh. I don't know what invest. Honestly, I'll be very open. Right? I don't know what investments were made in developing AI models in India. Yes, all of us have seen the India AI mission, but I don't know if enough investments were made. The ministry announced this challenge saying that build sovereign models and we'll do this. Sure, Sarvam was given some grant, uh, but other than that, I don't see enough investment in building or developing AI models in India or for India. Uh, India's AI mission has a lot of budget, but I personally at least do not know where those investments are going in or where that budget is going in. We do not yet have access to GPUs. Not just me, leading researchers in the country from IIScs and IITs to IIITs do not have access to high quality GPUs. They do not have access to high quality data sets. The government should perhaps do a lot more investment in creating these GPUs and giving access to the researchers and the community as well. I personally do not know if these investments have been made or budgets have been actually not just allocated but transformed onto the ground. Right. Additionally, what might incentivize better utilization of models developed to better suit global south? So that's where I said we need to think of solutions aimed at the commons as well. Right. That is right now lacking because we do not yet have true voice interfaces yet. We do not have access in native languages yet. I think once these are there, that is when I think we can think of incentivizing. But good question. Something that we might need to engage in a discussion about. I don't have a ready-made answer to that. Something that I'm happy to discuss. I see Renish is typing, but I think these are the three questions, and let's see.
Thank
Oh,
you,
sorry.
Praveen. Thank you.
Sorry.
Is there another question? If there's
No
any
more.
other question, okay. I had a question from my end actually. So, do you think the low internet connectivity in rural areas in India is also a major problem in deploying AI models? Maybe is there something specifically that can be done regarding this? Or
My view on that, Angela, is that that's a problem that is currently being solved. Right.
okay,
Take 10 years ago, right, and compare it with today, right? India has skipped a couple of generations in mobile thing. We moved from 2G to 3G to 5G. 4G is a very short duration. 3G was
mm,
there, but that was also not as prolonged a period as it was in the Western countries. 4G was definitely not as protracted as in the Western countries, and we are moving to 5G. And I see that a lot of people in the rural parts of the country today are now gaining access to mobile internet. Right, that's being that so internet is now being far more democratized. Right, mobile phones are now far more democratized. A lot of people have access to smartphones. Even the feature phones that are now coming into the market are essentially smartphones. Unlike back in the day when you just had a Nokia 1100, where the biggest feature was a flashlight or a torchlight. Today's feature phones are far more smart. Right? I think that's a problem that's being solved. That's more of a network infrastructure capacity issue that you're talking about. I would like to believe that in a year or two, that would not be as much a problem as it is today. Even today, it is not as much a problem as it was 5 years ago or a decade ago. So I see that, and I will have to assume that this is a problem that will be solved because there are other players who are already working on the network capacity and other issues. So that's how I would look at it, Angela.
We have one more question in the chat. Vikas is asking, are you considering privacy of personal data while building LLMs or in training data? I mean to ask what all data types are captured.
Yes. First of all, the kind of questions that we are asking are not about private data or not about personal data. We're trying to capture the cultural data, as I said, right? If you look at, if you remember, what I was trying to show in the presentation was asking about stories, asking about food, asking about local skills, asking about place histories, asking them to take photos or videos of old newspapers, right? From whatever we understand, there is no PII in this, so there's no personally identifiable information in this. We are taking consent from people before we record them, though. We are asking people to speak about it. We are asking their consent to record this. We are explaining why we are doing this. We are also collecting information of the person who has given this, who's giving us this data, because ultimately we want to give them due credit as well. We want to say that, so the 45,000 contributors for Swecha Guntuka, for example, we have all their names, that these are the people who have contributed to it. Right? We are collecting some metadata as well, that this information or this voice has been collected at so and so location, but that is not for any other purpose other than to say that, hey, in this region, this is how the accent or dialect looks like. Right? We want to create an accent or a dialect map as well. You click on a place, you'll be able to listen to the dialect or the accent of that region in that language. So we are collecting some metadata. We are collecting names after taking consent. We are not putting this out in the public. The data set will be public, but we are going to ensure that when we put out the data set in public, there is no PII data over there. Right. So, and the kind of data that we are collecting, there is no personal data that we are collecting. We are only talking about anecdotes, stories, skills, and these kind of things. In fact, the internship also trains people to ensure that no personal data is being collected. There will be a second level of check to ensure that there's a structure to the internship that ensures that there's no personal data that is coming into this as well.
Ranish has just posted
Yes,
something.
yes, the Panini cluster. Yes, we've named it after Panini, the language scientist.
Just a second, we're just checking on our YouTube live as well if there's any questions there.
Okay.
There's one question that I have. One second, I'm just posting it in the chat for you.
Sure.
This is Vignesh asking this question.
I've been asked this question a lot of times, and Vignesh, I've seen the same question, debate, discuss, pop up even back in the day when we were talking about the open data coming in, right? I do not know. I'll give you an example, counter example here, not an example of protecting. When we did Chandamama Kadalu, a couple of months later, one of our executive committee members was talking to Google Bard back then, which is currently Gemini. So he asked Google Bard to tell a small short story in Telugu. It came up with a short story. So he asked, how did you come out? They said, no, I was trained on data. Then he had to ask 5 more questions to figure out where this data set was. And it finally came up saying that I learned this from Swecha's Chandamama Kadaru data set. Right? Before even we produced the story spinner model, Google Bird actually already scraped this data and learned from it. I again Prashant's on this call, and Prashant's better position to answer this. We've been talking to Prashant for. I spoke to Prashant even when this incident happened. Right, we've been trying to see what kind of licensing mechanisms can we come up with. Right, we believe GPL v2, GPL v3 is not sufficient. This is not source code. This is data is fundamentally different in some sense. The models are different. Maybe GPL-v2, GPL-v3 for the model itself, but what sort of licenses can we have for data sets? It is not CC licenses alone, right? It's not just CC licenses. It is not just GPLs, right? So can we come up with something new? And again, this is the right forum for me to ask. I know Prashant saying that we're already working on ideas. Ideas, to help us do this will be great. Yeah, I know that is a good question, right? But we are working through it. We are working through it. There's a draft. I know there are drafts in terms of the licenses. How do you enforce these drafts is a different. How do you enforce these licenses is also a different challenge. But let's at least first of all come up with this new the copyleft of this AI generation. We'll have to work towards it.
So we are also working on it. I think we'll be getting back to you as well here.
Yeah, yes, yes.
That's all the questions we have. So I think I'll be ending the session now. Thank you once again, Praveen, for taking this time and giving us this speech over here. We're very grateful that you at Chandamama and Svecha and Vishwamaya are doing this great People for AI work. Thanks a lot and hope to see you soon again.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.